This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Listen, no one has ever been in a meeting and anyone said, you know what this meeting needs right now is more emotion. No one's ever been there, right? And yet emotions are present. Whether they're bubbling up or they're under the surface, our emotions are there. And they really do show up in negotiations. How can I ask do you have an example that you can share even in a general terms of when emotion like came to the surface, and how you were or were not able to kind of manage it? And maybe we can talk some more about how, the advice we give.
I have a few different, very blurry. I try to block them out of me, not trying to, not throwing off the deal in any way, but really just me feeling. And it's usually me with attorneys, the business and the legal side of things sometimes butt heads. I can't give you an exact example. I know if I think about it, I probably can, but yeah, it's one of those things that it's just, to me, it's just so important, just trying to figure out how to kind of just hold them in a little bit, or at least, do what I do is I have exercises around that, right? Whether it's, my yoga that I do a couple times a week, and I swear it's so cliche, but I meditate and I learn how to just, push out, these things that are coming in your head, and you want to be so emotive, but learning how to deal with those is so important. And I think that's, those types of activities really help, and breath work and things like that. And certainly for someone that is highly emotive like myself, and at least, I'm self-aware of that. I think a lot of times people, they aren't, and they're stubborn and they're arrogant and they want to keep pushing. And that always kind of ends up going in the wrong direction, in my opinion, in a deal or when you're negotiating. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any advice too. I'd be, really open ears to hearing from your side of things.
Yeah, well, I think you're hitting on the head. It starts with awareness, and being able to be aware of that emotion and the source, right? So, is it frustration? Is it anger? Is it disappointment? And is it because somebody broke their word? Is it because they're delayed? Is it because there are things that are just out of our control? Is it because they won't respond? I mean, there's any number of sources that lead to any number of emotions. And I think just being aware that that's happening and saying, okay, it's happening. I think there's stuff what you're describing in terms of getting ahead of it. Yeah, we can anticipate that, right? I think that's something that catches people by surprise. It's like, why am I so emotional about this? Well, because we're human. And so emotions are part of what makes us who we are. So anticipating it, even expecting it, being able to name it, is a pretty good start. And we have to deal with both our own emotions. And then I think the harder one sometimes is allowing others to bring their emotions to the table too, and engage effectively with them. And that means being able to name their emotion and take the time to understand, what's so frustrating or anger causing or disappointing, whatever it might be for them, and be able to say, I can see where that would be frustrating, right? Doesn't mean I agree with the underlying cause. We may have very different perspectives, and we can get to that. We can get to problem solving. I think sometimes, though, especially when we're type A personalities, we're highly successful, we want to get right to problem solving. And the truth is, you can't problem solve with someone when either we're emotionally triggered or they're emotionally triggered. It's just not possible. So, yeah, you got to be a little patient there.
Yeah, and I think to kind of give you something else, a different framework for this, JB, and something that I help kind of explain to clients is the tactical pause. So just quick story on my end. So in the military, I was very fortunate to be able to spend some time with special operations. We were doing this large training event where we were going to get on helicopters. I had about 40 guys underneath me at the time, get on helicopters, fly to the objective. We're going to do go through some actions on the objective. But this is a kind of organization that always has multiple curveballs that they're going to throw at you. And it's my first time doing this with this unit. And, we're on the objective. Things start going crazy. And I'm buried in my map, really not fully understanding everything that's going on around me. And it's really hard to understand what's going on. And so I had this senior NCO just kind of grab me and like, sir, you need to take a tactical pause. You need to just take a second, collect yourself. Let's look around, get your head out of the map. You can see where your units are and what they're doing. Then let's come together, come up with a plan, and move forward. And so that always stuck with me, because every single mission I had after that, or trying to train any of my junior leaders below me, explaining the tactical pause, we call it step into the balcony, getting that, that far view of everything, so you're not sucked into anything, has helped me out tremendously. Maybe at least thinking through that and how you can apply it. Maybe it could be something for you as well, JB.
It's really interesting you say that, because without terming it tactical pause, I think that's something that I've really employed over the last year or two, is and both in business and in personal life, is just taking a deep breath instead of playing up to the emotions in the room and firing back. I think our instinct as humans and type A personalities, Aram, is you want to fire right back. Everyone has an ego, everyone has pride, and no, I'm right, you're not. But instead, taking a second, taking a break. Aram, you said a line. I'm trying to remember the line you just said, but I can see where that can be frustrating for you. And you say that, you kind of bring down the tempers in the room. You take a second to pause. Sometimes I even, instead of getting hot with an attorney, I'll just be like, "Hey, Mary Jane, I'm just gonna let's just take a second. I'm gonna take 5 minutes and I'll give you a call back." Because I know that's the only way, and the continuity might get lost a little bit, but that's okay, because if you don't do that, you're going to ruin the relationship or ruin the deal anyway. So just take a second. And most people, actually, I've found, um, they like that. They like that you have the ability to be self-aware and do those types of things and types of exercises to try and figure out a middle ground, or at least just come down and be more level-headed going forward. So that's awesome. Tactical. I love that. That's cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if if you read Gary Nessner's Stalling for Time, but in there he also talks about taking the same kind of steps in a negotiation situation, and it definitely has application to business as well. So
talk about a time where you need it more than ever to be on point. Yep. Oh my goodness, I can only imagine that.
You mentioned Eddie Shapiro as an both boss and influencer for you. There's another Shapiro, the Shapiro name. There's a number of Shapiros involved in negotiations. Dan Shapiro wrote a great book with Roger Fisher called Beyond Reason, and they talk about emotions there, and they categorize them kind of in 5 different blocks: appreciation, affiliation, autonomy, status, and role, and understanding which is kind of being triggered or which one needs to be addressed for us or with our counterparts. So it's another helpful sort of framework thinking about it.
Can you guys send me these book recommendations after? I'm like, oh wait, no, I'm not kidding. I'm always about these new reads.
Yeah,
so
happy
great.
to do that. Hey, listen. So, you talked about kind of the negotiation. Well, the kind of a problem solving situation. That kind of was going awry, and you had to get really creative. How about something that just like, do you have an example of like something you can consider to be kind of like your best negotiation success, an example, and how were you able to get that win? Is there yes?
Yeah, I think one that I can definitely think back to is a home that I represented the seller on a Noyak Road, where it was a $4.5 million beautiful modern home on the water, and it had a lot of issues, meaning that there was a shared driveway that wasn't completed by the builder. There was road noise. There was issues with how close it was to the water, and what I had to do to step in and try and help facilitate a deal and make sure that the buyer kind of came through and wanted to buy it, is I told the buyer that, look, I'm representing the seller here. You have a buyer's representative. It's not me. But in order to get this done, I promise you, we're going to write up a little document of all your wishes and wants in order to get this deal done. And it was outside of the money thing. The price was already negotiated, but it was some things, for example, like, he wanted a less of a gradient on the driveway because it was a super steep driveway, and he was worried with his kids when they're either biking on it or they plow the driveway. He wanted a gradient done. My seller wouldn't agree to it because he felt like he was already taking a cut on that negotiated transaction price. And then there was another thing where he wanted this Dan, who was the buyer, he wanted trees trimmed in front of the house so he can have a little bit of better views to the water that his family could enjoy. Seller wouldn't budge on that one either. So I told Dan, I go, Dan, look, I have a contracting company. I asked the seller if I could do this. He said, yeah, sure, JB, if it's on your penny, fine. So I talked to my brother first, and I said, Chase, we're gonna have to just eat this one. I'll pay you for your time to come out and do the driveway over, slash hire your tree guy for $5,000 to come and trim down the trees. The commission on that was $65,000. So if I didn't do those things, the house had been sitting there for a year. I don't get that deal done. But because I've had the resources around, and because I was able to sort of leverage the fact that this is really what the buyer wanted, just a little bit of sort of compromise and middle ground, because those things really weren't taken care of and they probably should have been. And the ability for me to get that done for him got the deal done. So I think it's, again, it kind of goes back, ties in what we're talking about with relationships and just making sure that you're resourceful and accountable and trustworthy. And I follow through with those things. And Dr. Dan, I'm going over Dr. Dan's house for Memorial Day weekend. So that's the type of thing, you just go above and beyond sometimes. So
I think we have a podcast that you'll need to take a listen to. We had Brian Rodriguez from the Lana Rodriguez Group. He's also a realtor out of Colorado, and he sold a large hotel in Colorado. And a lot of the things that you were saying, being creative, building these relationships, especially with the commercial property, where it takes a long time to build that relationship and to figure everything out. Said a lot of things that are very similar to what you're saying, and so definitely recommend listening to that podcast and grabbing a few things from Brian as well.
Definitely will. And I found that the really good ones like Brian, they go above and beyond. The people that just kind of sit back and wait for things to happen, they're never very successful. And I think that transcends all industries and careers. And you got to be a go-getter. That's a prereq.
Hey, JB, let me ask you one other question. This one, you've talked so much about relationships, understanding, interests, concerns, and needs of clients or contractors. One of the elements, when we think of elements of negotiation that we often talk about is fairness, standards of legitimacy. So we think about examples would be industry practice, precedent, those sort of things. How does that show up in a unique market where, I imagine in the Hamptons, you're not talking about apples to apples between property and property. How do you try to establish like what's fair and reasonable, whether it's around price or it's around any of this additional sort of work that you're doing? How do you find that standard when it's not like there's not like an obvious industry average, or maybe there is some standards you regularly use?
Great question. It's tough. It's tough to establish those things. What I usually rely on is what we call appraisals of homes, to just try and really, or more generally from a macro standpoint, really try and determine the fair value of a home or a fair value of a property. And the way I do that is whether I have an appraiser that can come out and give me that knowledge, and sometimes the buyer or investor will pay for it. Sometimes we split it. Sometimes I'll take it on. And other times it's going through what we call a CMA, or comparative market analysis, to really understand where this property has transacted over the years, where the street's over, where they've those comps have traded, to come up with a number. And of course, that's before emotion comes into it. That's really just trying to find like a number, and that's the starting point. But then there's things, Aram, I have times where owners will come in, and my usual pitch is I start out with the investment opportunity or the rental revenue that they can accrue if they buy this home, or the potential appreciation rate over 5 to 10 years. I have people that come in and I'll start with that, and they just go, JB, like, thank you. And it's great you have that knowledge. It doesn't matter. because they just want the home that bad, or they want the property that bad. And I just go, wow, either it's for their family and they have a dire situation, they just need to get out of the city, or some people are just fortunate enough in the world that I'm in that they just don't care about those things. And I'm not. It's still kind of eye opening every day when I run into that. But yeah, I think it's truly though identifying, like trying to figure out that number, and then going from there, and knowing that there's going to be other elements and factors that come in, but that's usually my starting point, is that analytics and that diligence that goes into what I do.
Thanks.
So circling back to what we started talking about earlier in the episode, and that was how successful you're able to apply this in your personal life. You're obviously having a tremendous amount of success in the business aspect of things. So how good of a negotiator are you in your personal life? And then I'll share with you what some of our other guests are saying.
I have more trouble in my personal life.
We all do. We all do.
I don't know what it is, guys. And it's, I don't know if I'm just taxed from doing it all day, every day, usually with my clients in my business. And I just don't have the energy to kind of really talk through some of the steps that we've already, touched on, which helps us become really good negotiators. I love the people around me. I have really amazing human beings that are my family, and my significant other. Her name is Victoria. But God, is she stubborn. And it's it's a day-to-day battle and struggle. And that's really that tactical pause that came from her, who we've been seeing each other for 3.5 years and really close to making the next step. But we found that when we take that pause, instead of riling each other up and going head to head, it usually helps. And we can come back and be more level-headed and approach the situation from a different perspective and angle. But that's where it's funny. That's where that originated. And I've taken that and used it in my business life. And it's helped tremendously. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing, guys. It's little sister is the same way. It's very, very stubborn, type A. And I think, we're all pretty young. So we're 20s and 30s. And I think it's just about working at it every day and just trying to figure out, it's not the end of the world if we disagree, but why do you disagree? And trying to hear everyone's point of view. So yeah, it's tough.
Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team, are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to NEGOTIATEx.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over there.